The mid-range market is heating up, and when I say mid-range in this instance, I'm talking purely about price, not about power. Because in this comparison, I'm going to be showing you two phones that are fast and smooth, but don't cost very much money. I'm Cam Bunton from Pocket-lint, and this is our comparison of the Poco F3 and the OnePlus Nord CE. These are two of the best phones in their price range, but which should you buy? In this video, hopefully I'll help you decide. And while you're here, if you could tickle that like button, tap subscribe and the notification bell, that would be delightful. So design first, and this actually could be one area that decides it for you, if only because of the difference in size. The Nord CE is noticeably more compact, at least when it comes to width and height. There's not much difference when it comes to thickness, there's only 1/10 of a millimeter between them, and both are generally quite slim. The two phones each have their own practical benefits too. For instance, the Nord CE has a 3.5mm port for wired headphones and headsets, where the F3 doesn't. Poco F3 has IP53 rating against water and dust, which means essentially that it's splash proof. OnePlus doesn't have that, although they did tell us that it should survive being splashed. One thing I like, perhaps surprisingly, is the fingerprint sensor on the Poco. It has a physical reader in the button on the side, and that's not just thin, but quick and reliable too. OnePlus's we found was decent enough, it was reliable, just didn't feel as quick. And there's a hole punch cut out in each screen. Poco's is much slimmer, and so doesn't interrupt as much of the available surface area. It's also placed nicely in the center, out of the way. Now I will say this, I do love the way the Poco F3 feels in two hands when you're typing away, but the frosted plastic finish on the back of the Nord CE is really nice and looks fantastic in this blue void colour. What's more, it's nearly 30 grams lighter, and that's something you can definitely feel when it's in your hand. And the size makes a difference too. If you want something that's easy to hold and carry around with you in your pocket, the Nord is the one. One very minor thing I noticed while I was typing messages was that the Poco has a much more subtle haptic feedback when you're typing, compared to the Nord CE, which gives you a much cheaper feeling buzzy effect. So displays, and despite spec lists that look different, there's not a huge amount in this as long as you're happy to go into the settings menu and adjust things. That's because that while both have AMOLED Full HD displays at 1080 by 2400 resolution, their default settings are quite different. OnePlus's default vivid mode seems to boost red, so my own personal skin tone looks a lot pinker, while the automatic mode on the Poco seems to oversaturate blues and make them a bit unnatural. Thankfully, both have display settings that allow you to calibrate them to the way you want to have it. So that's not really much of an issue here. Poco's reaches refresh rates of 120Hz, which is higher than the 90Hz on the OnePlus, but to my own eye it's really hard to tell the difference in daily use. Poco's does feel fluid in general interface, and so does the Nord. I wouldn't suggest basing your opinion based on this. Instead, there are other factors, like the fact that Poco's screen is larger, making it a great immersive canvas, and it's joined by stereo speakers to enhance that feeling. Nord CE only has a single loudspeaker. The Poco screen is also brighter. In that way, it's just a much better media consumption device. Now, as with any point of comparison on this list, you could easily make a judgment on performance and battery from just looking at the spec sheet and assuming that the Snapdragon 870 will give you a much better performance than the Snapdragon 750 that's in the Nord CE. But that will depend on exactly what you use it for. In truth, when it just comes to general day-to-day phone usage and casual gaming, both will run even the most demanding games pretty easily. Where we did notice a difference was in load times for the bigger games like Call of Duty Mobile, where it took a second or two longer on the Nord, and the graphics performance in those games. The Poco seems to render sharper images in those games with more demanding graphics without stuttering and lag. The Nord, by comparison, retained that smoothness and responsiveness, but has slightly more jagged edges and slightly less detail. Technically speaking, the 870 is the more powerful chip and will benchmark way higher, offering better high refresh rate performance, and you will see it in the more graphically demanding titles if you put them side by side. As for battery life, both have very similar capacities. It's 4,500 mAh versus 4,520 mAh, both with their own fast charging, 30 watts versus 33 watts on the Poco. That means each will get you a full battery in just under an hour, roughly. They'll both even get you similar battery life. We lasted about a day and a half with both phones using them for casual gaming, social media, and such. throughout the day. Again, another thing I wouldn't base a decision on. So Poco has it, I think, when it comes to performance and media, but where the Nord might just step ahead is in the camera department. Now, we're speaking about the primary lens here, and it seems to take shots which have a bit more natural colour and depth to them. The processing on the Poco phone is quite aggressive sometimes, depending on what you're shooting, making colours seem a bit too saturated and contrast high. Often it doesn't produce great HDR effects either, completely bleaching out the sky on some shots, while just about getting it right in others. So it's not that it can't do it, it's just that it's a bit inconsistent. Neither is particularly good at focusing on objects that are close to the camera, and both have ultra-wide lenses with similar performance. But for the most natural processing of colours and detail and depth, I think the OnePlus Nord CE is definitely the one to go for here. So in the end, there are a couple of things to consider. The OnePlus is more compact, lightweight, and I think has the better primary camera. The Poco has a bigger display, faster performance, and the stereo speakers for better media and gaming consumption. There's a little difference in price, with the Poco being more expensive too. So what matters most to you, multimedia and speed or practicality and cameras? If you can answer that one, you know which phone is the best one for you. I've been Cam, I'm at Cam Bunton on social media, you can find me on there if you want to, or use the comments down below if you have any questions. Please do hit that thumbs up, it helps us a lot. Subscribe and tap the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any more. I'll see you again in the next one. Bye for now.